Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, a podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Welcome to the Pelicans Podcast. I am Joe Cardosi, joined by Lothario himself, Mr. Jim Eichenhofer. And man, we have a full slate today. You're in studio, and the phone is aglow because our guest today is going to be Mr. Fletcher Mackel, sports director of WDSU. I could not be more thrilled for the insights of both of you. I emptied my mind completely this morning till I was just staring into the blank darkness to make sure that I could get filled up with the knowledge all of you guys are going to feed me.
Well, excellent. I thank you, I think.
I don't know words anymore.
But yeah, no, it was it's always good talking to Fletcher Mackel. And honestly, when we went through kind of ideas for who the guest would be today, I thought with the in-season tournament starting in earnest for New Orleans Friday night, obviously there were 14 teams that already played a game last week, but with this being the debut for the Pelicans in this new format, I thought who better to talk about ideas, and
we figured who else other than Fletcher? Why even go anywhere else than the local spigot of information that is Fletcher Mackel?
And I think he definitely delivered, as people will hear later in the show. I knew he would have a lot of thoughts about the in-season tournament courts.
Yeah.
I knew he would have some insight on the Pels City.
I didn't realize he was such
uniforms.
a designer, man. This guy has like deep design ideas.
Maybe that's his second job that he does.
I can't
on
wait
the side.
till he retires from sports and just starts walking around in crazy feathered outfits and whatever he designs. But man, Fletcher's got thoughts on everything. It was a great conversation with Fletcher, and hopefully something that will bring people a little more into the light on this in-season tournament stuff on the courts. We've sort of been goofing on it. You got to as it's new, and a lot of people have been taking to X to share their thoughts. But I feel like as the season goes more and more, you're going to start getting these little droplets of knowledge, and eventually it will normalize what all this stuff means and what it's for.
Yeah, I mean, and as we talked about on Wednesday, when we had Erin Summers, she mentioned, all publicity is good publicity. I do think the courts have made people discuss the in-season tournament format more to a greater extent than they would be if they had just trotted out the normal courts that we see all the time. So that's been helpful. The uniforms as well have been something that's been a conversation piece. Kind of pairing your city edition uniforms with the courts was an interesting pursuit, I think, from a marketing standpoint, the way that they had those blended together. I've noticed, by the way, too, that some of the teams it seems like they've made sure that if their city edition uniform was bright red, that the court wasn't also bright red. For example, the Bulls have a
Can't
black
blend in.
Right, the Bulls have a black uniform and a red court, so it kind of goes together well. And I think the Pelicans will be the same way. If you think about it, the court is purple and green, but the city uniforms are black with green letters. So
that way you can't have a guy hiding on the baseline or something.
Actually, Jose probably suggested that they make it both the same color so he could blend it.
Camo, just everything camo. just make it sneaky for me. Yeah, he's like the Predator. He'll be wearing whatever color is on the side. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And Fletcher brought some great insight to it in terms of how it may shake out. You and him had some great ideas. People, get out your notebooks, get out your pens, because some things may be happening. We know the bigwigs are listening to Jim and Fletcher when they're both on here.
Of course.
And man, I guess we should talk about E.J. Liddell, Jordan Hawkins. It seems like we have been relying on them quite a bit as of late, out of necessity, of course. But Jordan Hawkins has continued to shoot. It seems like the fans are getting more and more on his side. The groundswell of support is behind him. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of just getting to know E.J. Liddell after his time sort of away for a bit.
Yeah, he got to play in the fourth quarter of the game against Minnesota. Obviously, it was one-sided, and a lot of guys got in the game.
Sure.
He's actually been assigned to the G League, so he's going to be in Birmingham for X amount of time. Not sure how long that's going to be, but we kind of talked about the in-season tournament a lot back on Media Day, and so both of those players, Erin Summers interviewed them, as well as the entire wide range of the whole roster. But one of the things that I thought I wanted to hear from the players was there was talk in the summer about, incentives as far as the in-season tournament. This is something also that we get into with Fletcher Mackel later in the show, but wanted to hear from Pelicans players in terms of their thoughts on the extra reward financially that they could potentially get from the in-season
tournament. Because it's easy for people to make like regular people money, to be like, oh, it's just some more commas for them. They don't care. Commas are commas. Money's money.
Right.
It all buys stuff. I think they were pretty excited about it.
And even more specifically, too, I mean, is it true that a lot of NBA players make a lot of money? Of course. But there's also guys at the bottom part of the roster,
yes,
or maybe more to the point, the newer guys, the guys that are just cracking into the league, just making it for the first time. Jordan Hawkins was a lottery pick. So the guys that are first round picks are on like a lottery scale. They're not making an insane amount of money right off the bat.
Right.
And then EJ Liddell was a second round pick. So for those guys, I mean, to put it in specific terms, if you're on the team that wins the in-season tournament, each player and coach makes $500,000.
Yeah.
And then even it kind of scales down. I think it's $200 or $250 if you make the championship round but lose, and then it's $50,000 for just making the quarterfinals. So, but for a player who's on a salary of say $300,000, $500,000, that $50,000 is nothing to sneeze at, and nothing to think is like, whatever, $50,000, no big deal.
And people also forget too, like the basketball play, the numbers they make on paper. Yes, it's a lot, but it takes a while to accumulate, especially for these new guys and stuff. To get one, you could pay off a house with that right there.
Sure,
I mean, that'd be beautiful.
And I'm pretty sure no one is tuning in to listen to me talk about tax brackets and stuff like that. But I mean,
it's not an economy class.
If your salary is $1 million, you're not making $1 million. You're making like half of that, maybe the way that they do with the tax brackets. So yeah. I'm not expecting anyone to be like, oh, the poor NBA players. They definitely need to win the in-season tournament so that they can put their kids to school and stuff like that. But in these clips with Erin Summers from Media Day, first EJ Liddell and then Jordan Hawkins, they gave, I thought, were pretty good responses in terms of their opinions on how they would view the $500,000 for winning the in-season tournament.
This is about the in-season tournament. Some people have said that an NBA player wouldn't care about an extra $500,000 for winning the tournament.
What? Oh man, I would love an extra $500,000. Who said that?
It just been some opinion. Like that's not going to motivate the players to actually try to win or care about winning this tournament.
It depends on what type of player it is. I mean, guys who probably get paid $200 million, I don't really know if they really care about like $500,000. But me, I'm going to put my life on the line for that. So, yeah.
So it's definitely incentive for you.
Yes, most definitely.
For the in-season tournament, some people have been saying that NBA players don't care about the money that they are giving for the winners. It's not a big enough incentive for you guys to care about a new tournament.
How much is the money? How much is it?
I think it's $500,000.
I absolutely care about it. Yeah, I do indeed want that money.
I do indeed want that money. I often think that. And Jordan Hawkins, good to see the young fella getting on the train early. Get that money, young fella.
Yeah, and by the way, I think I need to go back through and look through the fine print of the bonuses and incentives.
Yeah.
Is there a podcast host reward for winning the in-season tournament? Is there like maybe $50 or something like that?
I would
take
love to see you go out there and just dunk on someone, do the too small gesture, and collect a check.
And I don't even know. I don't want to have to actually do any work. I just want the money.
That's true. Yeah.
I just want there to be some kind of clause where it's like if you have a podcast with a team that the two people that run it both get like $50 a piece.
Yeah, I mean, could we at least
that would work for me.
It's great to see people talking about the players talking about how excited they are about that stuff. I can't imagine not being motivated. And I think as it goes on and it becomes more clear and sort of more normalized to talk about the in-season tournament ins and outs, it's going to be less confusing, people. It is new. We understand that you're still like, what? Why am I supposed to care? Why are they making me do this? It's not going to be homework forever.
And I've said this a few times, maybe not necessarily just on the show, but just in general, that as people see the standings, it's going to become a lot more clear to people. And I think the first and second game maybe of the pool play of the group stage, it's kind of a little bit vague as far as people knowing what is on the line. But I think when we do get to that third and fourth game of the group stage and you're going to be able to say, okay, the Pelicans need to win this game to advance. If they lose, they're out, or whatever team, the Grizzlies, if they lose this game, and there's going to even be some cases where teams in different groups have to win a game by 14 points because of the point differential stuff.
Right.
So I think that's when it's going to become really evident to people of what the stakes are. But, we in the previous clips, we talked about some of the younger guys on the team, players maybe that don't make an astronomical amount of money. So, $500,000, they would have a smile on their face all day if that money comes in. But in terms of the veteran guys, the guys that make a good amount of money now, or guys that have been in the league for a long time and have piled up a good amount of money, you wonder with them, like, maybe for them it's not that big of a deal, but Larry Nance Jr. and Cody Zeller would tell you otherwise. And in these clips, also interviews with Erin Summers, the two veteran guys, they've both been in the league either 10 plus years or close to 10 years in Larry's case. They both talk about, what they would, what their reaction is to the idea of being able to land that big money from winning the in-season tournament.
The new in-season tournament, a lot of media members have said that an NBA player might not care about an extra $500,000. How do you respond to that opinion?
I would say speak for yourself. If that's what a player said, I would love an extra $500,000. I think anyone in the locker room would too. So that's plenty of motivation for me.
So we have the new in-season tournament coming up this year. Some people have said that the $500,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money to give to an NBA player. They wouldn't really care about it. How would you respond?
That is a lot of money, regardless of how long I've played in the NBA or how much money I've made. $500,000 is a lot of money. So anyway, I don't know what I would spend it on, but I would be glad to take the money.
Great stuff there. Again, I like that philosophy. No matter how much you have, a little more is better. Numbers matter. They accrue, my friend. So I don't think anyone's turning their nose up at extra dough. Certainly not me. If you want to shower me in it. If you see me on the street, throw some hundreds my way. I'm not going to cry about it. Just saying.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm kind of harping on this a little bit, but I mean, I also wonder, is there a clause for, Larry and Cody have been in the league for a long time. I've been here a long time as well. Can you sprinkle a little bit my way? Because I'm almost on, I'm coming up on my 18-year anniversary with the Pelicans. So
and almost your 18th year being alive, man. You're so young. It was fun seeing the gleam in their eyes. You can't really maybe tell from listening to just the audio, but anytime you brought up the monetary advantages of the tournament, all of them kind of got a little smile and started looking around. It is going to be fun. And again, it's going to be fun to see what this in-season tournament reaction is like, what some of the people feel about the courts, the rules, and who better to guide us through the ins and outs, what to be excited about, what to get pumped about. Fletcher Mackel of WDSU in New Orleans. He is the sports director there. And just plugged into the Pelicans. He is an absolute firecracker. We cannot keep him contained any longer. Let's get to WDSU's Fletcher Mackel. Joining us on the Pelicans podcast, the man with all the knowledge you seek and crave. You can follow him on X, Twitter, whatever you still call it, at Fletcher WDSU. Mr. Fletcher Mackel, how are you doing, my friend?
I need you to follow me around, Joe. I need that introduction. Like every time I walk into a building or into work, that would be fantastic.
Look, I'll have a boombox on my shoulder. I'll have some theme music ready for you. Nobody's put in the work you have to deserve it more. Maybe other than Jim. I'm sorry, Jim. Didn't mean to offend
That's
you,
okay.
Jim.
I'm not offended. Don't worry.
But we are here with Fletcher Mackel. So excited to have him because I don't know about any local person that is excited more about basketball than you. As a basketball team that is still trying to claw and bring in some fans to understand, and you've been such an advocate for the Pels and basketball in general in this city. Got to ask you right away, have you seen most of the in-tournament courts yet, and have you had to be medicated because of it?
I'll say this. I am all about new ideas, new things, pushing the envelope. Like, I am more of a progressive person that likes when people come up with these ideas or these concepts or let's try it. And does everything always work? It absolutely does not. But what I've always liked about the NBA, which I feel like other leagues have lacked, is that they are always pushing the envelope. They are always trying new things, new concepts. And I think that the NBA is a true leader in at least North American professional sports. I can't speak on like European soccer teams because that's not my wheelhouse. But I do think the NBA is a leader and others follow. So I like the in-season tournament. And I'll say this, the courts are jarring at first, like jarring, because we are so used to that traditional wooden-looking floor, which is basketball. But given the fact that this is a handful of games in a new concept tournament, what other way to kind of announce their presence with authority than to say, look at this. We want to grab your attention to have people learn about the in-season tournament and pay attention to the in-season tournament. We are going like crayon box, like mind blown, like the most psychedelic crayon box that you could ever dream up. Throw it on a basketball court, and there it is.
It's like Zubaz pants. We were talking about it. Jim's always wearing his Zubaz pants.
Still.
Still.
20 years after, or 30, I don't know how long it's been since they were cool.
You're going to bring it back, my friend.
I'm trying my best.
Around.
Yeah, Fletcher, speaking of the courts, I was wondering, do you have any favorite? I feel like it's hard to really judge the ones that we haven't seen in an actual basketball game yet, the ones that are kind of just artist renderings. But from the 7 games that were played Friday, do you have any that you particularly enjoyed, or ones that any particular court that stood out to you from watching the highlights or watching games?
No, to be honest with you. There's not one that I say, boy, that, like, I love it. Make it their permanent court. You know what I mean? Like, I do think the novelty of them. And look, I'll say this. I can't wait till Tuesday night when the Pelicans host the Mavericks and we get to see this green and purple concoction with their, I love the City Edition uniforms. I think the City Edition uniforms, I think the concept in the uniforms this year is the best one New Orleans has ever come up with since they've been doing the City Editions. I love the black and the lime green and the theme of the New Orleans nightlife and the street. I love it. I think it's amazing. I was sick of Mardi Gras. I love Mardi Gras. I love nothing more than Carnival in New Orleans. I'm a born and raised New Orleanian. I just felt like it was an easy concept for them to continue to regurgitate year in and year out. And I just felt like our city is colorful and vibrant and fun, and we have other things we can celebrate. So whomever on the Pelicans branding, marketing concept team came up with this, I love the City Editions. I can't wait to see the court, because I do think New Orleans' court is probably going to be the most unique of all the ones we've seen. We'll see one, obviously, Friday night when the Pelicans play in Houston. So I can't wait to see what that, red thing looks like. It's going to look like Eastern Washington football in the red turf, I guess. But, Jim, to answer your question in a very long-winded format, there's not one that jumped out at me where I said, boy, they nailed it. I think that they're all loud, a bit obnoxious, but that's okay. They're trying to bring attention to something that's never been done before. And I am very excited, good or bad, to see what the game Tuesday night looks like live when I'm there, and on television is people at home watching.
Yeah, the city uniforms and the branding theme, that was actually Joe and I's idea. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we came up with it.
We had absolutely zero role in that. But I was actually going to ask you, you mentioned how you're a lifelong New Orleans, resident, and you've been here the entire time.
Sort of the unofficial mayor, if I say.
Yeah, I would say so too. I figured, what did you think of, you mentioned how you like the theme that Joe and I did not come up with, but what did you think of the uniforms in terms of the colors? Do you like that kind of that black and green combination?
Yeah, I liked it. The one thing I was concerned about, and it's still a little concerning, but it was better than I thought, is the black jerseys with the black NOLA and the lime green outline. I was worried that on TV, they're going to look fantastic, and they do. But when you're in person, sometimes same color on same color is hard when you're live and you're like in the 300 section. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
and so,
sure.
But it was better than I thought. And again, I like it. I think they're simple, they're subtle, the message of what they are, kind of like, I love the video that Shanika and her team put together using the Skull and Bones gang and kind of in the old New Orleans house. I mean, look, the concept sounded cool to me when I read about it. The video unveiling it was great, and I think the look is great. I love the black with the lime green. I hope that these city uniforms stick. I would be fine if they did, next year, a lime green with a black kind of look and just kind of inverted it, so to say, and made it kind of like loud and outlandish. Like Miami did the Miami Vice uniforms, and they came out with, I think it was the pink first. Then it was that kind of teal blue, and everybody just loved it. I really like these city editions. I think that when they said, hey, it's the streets of New Orleans, the nightlife of New Orleans, kind of New Orleans at night, and you see the video that goes with it in the uniforms, it kind of resonated with me. And I hope it did other fans and other media members and other people that see it. Again, like I said, I like some of the Mardi Gras concepts. I loved a few years ago when they had the white with the purple, green, and gold stripes. That was the Mardi Gras one that I loved more than anything. Mm-hmm. Last year's were okay, kind of the deep purple with the Mardi Gras colors on it. I didn't love as much, but it was fine. I just think that there's a lot of things to celebrate in New Orleans, and coming up with something. This seems like some work went into it, some real original thought, some real creativity, not just, let's do Mardi Gras again. Throw some purple, green, and gold concoction out there. That's good. So I really like the way these look, and I was more surprised that you could still read the NOLA when it was black on black lettering in person than I thought you were going to be able to. So again, I like the look. I like the color scheme. I like the theme. I like it all.
Yeah, you mentioned the Miami Vice uniforms. I think, in my opinion, the black city uniforms that they made are still like the pinnacle of city uniforms. I feel like everyone is trying to get to that level. Those things were just incredible as far as just how clean they looked and just a great execution of an idea. One more thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of the in-season tournament. A lot of people have kind of batted around ideas, and I think of you as kind of the idea man.
Absolutely.
In terms of incentives, basically the NBA decided for this first year of the in-season tournament that they're not going to add, a major, other than, the monetary stuff for the players and the coaches. There's no like huge reward. It's not like you get into the playoffs automatically if you win the in-season tournament. I was wondering if you have any ideas in terms of ways, maybe something they can consider for next year in terms of how do you reward the teams? And I think more to the point, how do you make fans look at it as, okay, this is really important for my team to win the in-season tournament because if we win it, we get X, Y, Z.
Yeah, look, and I know obviously there's a money factor in it for the players. There's obviously winning the games. There's a lot of games in the NBA we know. Unlike, football is every week is a mini championship, whereas basketball, if they play 82, there's been talk of, is that too many games? How do you make them all matter? I do think this does make like a game on a Tuesday night in November far more meaningful because, the players are playing for something. The team is playing for an in-season tournament cup. The players are playing for a bonus, from a, money standpoint. I think all those things matter and are good and bring relevance to, again, games that would just be ho-hum in the middle of the season. Mm-hmm. But I do like that idea. Major League Baseball did that to make the All-Star game more meaningful. Is whoever wins the All-Star game is the home team in the World Series, which is a big advantage, American and National League. I don't know if I have this is my idea and that's what they should do, but I can tell you I do like the idea of the winner of the in-season tournament being rewarded some way in the playoffs. And I don't know what that would be, right. Like how do you, like Denver was the number one seed in the West last year. Let's just say Sacramento had won the in-season tournament and they finished third. How do you reward them for what they did in the in-season tournament? That's the one thing I'd need probably someone smarter than me or more creative than me to say, okay, we could reward them by using X, Y, or Z. But I do like that idea, Jim. I do think that that's probably the next step or evolution of this is it's not just to make some, some midweek, mid-season games seem more important and feel more important and really become more important. But overall, at the end of the season, the winner of the in-season tournament also gets some type of bump up. And I don't know if that bump up is, do we say, like all the teams agree, okay, the winner of the in-season tournament automatically moves up a spot no matter what. So if they were 5, they're now 4. No matter what, that if the in-season tournament champ is right behind you, they have maybe it's like a draft swap, like you can defer if you want to or move up depending on what matchup you like best. Sure. And maybe that's something they offer the in-season tournament champ to say, you have the right to move up one spot in the standings if you choose. So like if you're 5, or if you're 6, you can move up to 5 if you like the matchup against the 4 seed better, or you could stay at 6 if you like the matchup against the 3 seed. But it would reward the in-season champ with maybe saying you have the opportunity to almost pick which matchup you like better in the first round.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I mean, if you're the 5, you can say, okay, we want home court advantage and move up to the 4 in the first round. Yeah. So I like that. I've been telling people my mild proposal is you win all tiebreakers with every team, no matter what, even if you get swept 0-4 in the regular season. My spicy hot proposal is the NBA and the teams. I don't know how this would be done, but you come up with a number of wins. Basically, like if you win the in-season tournament, it counts as 5 wins, say. So at the end of the regular season, if you win 45 games, you get 5 added on. Now you're a 50-win team. Yeah. And then whatever that gives you as far as how much it moves you up in the seeding.
That's where the standings are.
Right. Then that's what it. So that's
Jim,
those are a couple ideas.
You are a much more clever and more in tune person than me, because I think my idea is okay, but both of yours, I love both of it. I think that, because you remember this, look, in 2018, the Pelicans finished technically with the same record as the 4 and the 5 seed, but they were the 6 seed based on tiebreakers. Now, it worked out for them because they got Portland, and it was a good matchup, and they swept them. But based on record, the 4, the 5, and the 6 seed all won 48 games, and based on tiebreakers, instead of being 4 and having home court, the Pelicans ended up 6. So I like that. You're right, that the winner of the in-season tournament, that's the tiebreaker. That's kind of the card that's your game changer that you can play. And but I also really like the winner of the in-season tournament gets column 5 phantom wins. I love that. So you're right. If you have those 5 wins, I mean that's a mess. Even if it's 3 wins, you can say that's in the Western Conference. Oh, yeah. That may be the difference a huge between the 3 seed and the 7 seed. You know,
right, for sure.
Yeah, and the Pelicans stretch doesn't look to be getting any easier. You got next up, you got the Rockets, you got the Mavs twice, you got the Nuggets. Oh, they haven't done much lately, huh? The T-Wolves, who just gave us everything they could. So for people that are looking at this stretch and going, this is quite a hole, can you bring us off the ledge? Give us some hope. I know the Pelicans were without Zion Williamson. They are shorthanded. No C.J. McCollum because he was dealing with his issue. So can you give the fans reason to start beating their chests, getting pumped up for this early season stretch that looks pretty tough on paper here, Fletcher?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing I would say is if you're a fan, you got to love these matchups. I mean, you get Luka twice, you get, Jokic again, you get, Minnesota. I think they're a really good team this year. I think they're going to be kind of this year's Sacramento and be a top 4 team in the Western Conference. So you get these marquee matchups that you want to see your team play. Like, with all due respect to Monty Williams in Detroit, they're a long way away from being relevant. And so is that what you want to see? It's like, I'd rather see the best of the best. And the thing I've always said about the Pelicans is we know they have talent. I mean, look, I've covered this team. I started working here in 2002, and I love covering the NBA. And I have covered every team here. And I've seen a lot of teams that didn't have a lot of talent. I mean, I covered an 18 and 64 team. I covered teams that you knew just didn't have the depth to compete with the best in the West. This team has it all. I mean, you talk about, young, hungry, up-and-coming, guys they drafted like Jordan Hawkins and Dyson Daniels, and even I'll throw Trey Murphy into there. And, like undrafted guys, I mean, Matt Ryan and Jose Alvarado, they've done a great job of building up the roster from top to bottom. You've got stars, you've got high-level veteran role players. I mean, you've got all the pieces. It's just because of the injuries that you just mentioned, Joe, we haven't seen it all come together. But last year, when they were healthy, they were good. So that's why I always tell people, we know they can be good. We know there is good to great in that group. Can they stay healthy, and can they find the synergy to pull it all together? And so that would be the silver lining, is it's in there. It just has to kind of come together in some way
Yes.
that is meaningful, and that would be my silver lining.
Fletcher, wanted to ask you about the West so far, and obviously we have to couch everything with it's only been 2.5 weeks since the season started.
And it's the West.
A lot of teams have only played 7 or 8 games, but just kind of quickly going through, I think some of the teams that have probably better records or better spots in the standings than a lot of people projected. You have teams like Houston, Minnesota that we talked about, Dallas, and then on the other side, maybe teams that did really well last year and haven't gotten off to a good start are the Lakers, Grizzlies, and Sacramento. I mean, what are your thoughts on the West overall so far in terms of perhaps is it better than overall? Is the conference tougher than you thought it was going to be, or is it not as good as you thought it might be? Or what do you think just so far from what we've seen in the first couple weeks?
So far this year, I would say I'd lean into what you said to start, Jim, is that we're 2.5 weeks in, and there are some anomalies right now. Mm-hmm. Because I do think over the course of an 82-game season, things are going to flesh themselves out, and we're going to know kind of who and what teams are. Now, that being said, look, I thought Memphis was in for a little bit of a fall from grace, so to say, because, John Morant's out 25 games. Steven Adams is out. I felt like this Memphis team that had been one of the top teams in the West in the last 2 years dealt with a lot of off the court and on the court situations. So I did feel like they were going to be fighting for one of those play-in spots, and they weren't going to be fighting for the 1 seed in the West. The biggest surprise to me is Dallas, because I thought they had an offseason where it was like they were trying to get rid of Luka. It's like you're not even like they have bungled every opportunity they have to put the right pieces around one of the 5 best players in the NBA. Mm-hmm. And I thought, are they really starting 2 rookies around Luka? And so, but here's the thing, just weaponize Luka and get out of his way and put pieces around him that kind of know who and what they are. It's almost like LeBron, where it's like, look, he is the sun and everybody else has to rotate around his orbit, and we'll eventually figure out the right pieces around him, even if that means making a series of trades, which they always do for LeBron. That seems to be maybe the right fit for Luka. Maybe these young guys know, hey, this is what I have to do. I know who and what I am. And again, I still think Luka may win the MVP this year. He's just one of the 3 to 5 best players in the game right now. So I'd say they're my biggest surprise, because you looked at their team on paper and you thought, ooh, can Luka do it all by himself? And it's like, you know what? He kind of is. It's kind of like Harden in Houston when D'Antoni weaponized him a few years ago and he's winning MVP awards, and you've got guys like Chris Paul just drifting around on the court doing nothing. And so those would be my 2 biggest surprises. But I do think when the dust settles, you're still going to see, a lot of the teams that we expected to see. I still think Denver's the best team in the Western Conference. I certainly think the Golden State Warriors still have enough gas left in the tank to be very good. I don't think the Lakers, I was one of the people who was burying the Lakers last year when they started out 0-8 and 1-12 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And then they end up in the Western Conference Finals. So, I will never discredit LeBron James and his ability to just carry a team, to levels that we didn't think possible. I think the Clippers have immense talent. And if they can stay healthy, a lot like the Pelicans, they have a chance to make a serious run. But I just think it's a dogfight, Jim. I think that there's so many teams that are so talented. I could make an argument for probably 6 teams to finish 3rd, and I could make the same argument and convince myself that those 6 teams are going to all be in the play-in. And so I don't know how the standings are going to fall when it's all said and done. But I do think it's highly, highly competitive. I do think the Pelicans have a chance to be, one of those teams that's clear of the play-in. But my 2 biggest surprises, and again, I'm not surprised by Memphis because I just wasn't high on them, but I am surprised by Dallas so far.
Yeah, it just seems like the difference in the West between a play-in team and a locked-in playoff team is just a little bit of luck, a little roll of the dice. It's so hard to pick these things early on, but that's why the Oracles, Mr. Jim Eichenhofer and Fletcher Mackel, are here for me and you people. Mr. Fletcher Mackel, thanks for joining us, man. I feel a little smarter, a little more ready to endure this in-season tournament madness. I feel like we all learned and laughed a little bit, and hopefully none of us will go colorblind during the unveiling of these courts. Thanks again, man.
All right. Thank you all very much. And let me just say this, Joe. Now that I am in my late 40s, please never use the term Mr. Fletcher Mackel again, because I realize the reality of my age, and I don't think we're that far off in age, but nonetheless, I don't need Mr. in front of me.
Yeah, I understand that. That makes me feel like I'm helping you down the stairs, and you don't need that. You're an athletic guy. Oh, I'm excited. Huge thanks to WDSU's Fletcher Mackel. He always gets me ready for Pelicans games. Just sports in general makes me just excited about life. His enthusiasm is contagious. A bit of a tough slate to figure out going ahead, especially as the Pelicans are dealing with injuries. So again, people are still maybe a little shell-shocked, maybe a little confused. So help guide us through this upcoming slate. We are going to be facing Dallas, who surprised Fletcher a bit, it seems like.
Yes. This weekend you've got 2 games before the next time we record again on Monday morning. You have Houston in Friday night's in-season tournament game. Then you have Dallas on Sunday night. The Mavericks will also be here Tuesday, so it's a baseball series against them, which is kind of odd considering the proximity of where Dallas is to here, but that's a different story for a different day. I guess starting with the Friday game against Houston, I think one of the biggest things to pay attention to, and as we record this, it's not even noon yet. We don't have a ton of information about availability, but Houston, Alperen Şengün, their starting center, who's off to a really good start and has been a big reason why they've won 4 games in a row. They totally turned around, starting 0-3. Now they're 4-3. He's questionable with an injury, so we don't know whether he's going to play or not and face Jonas Valanciunas. And then obviously on the Pelicans side, they have a laundry list of injuries and different guys that are uncertain. As we record, Herb and Zion are both listed as questionable to play. One good piece of news, Najee Marshall is upgraded to doubtful. Now, I don't mean it's good news that he's doubtful, but it's
better than out.
It's much better than out, and I think it's a sign that he might be making progress and getting closer to being on the court. And then obviously you have the 4 guys that are listed as out, including C.J. McCollum, who's not going to play Friday. So that's one of the things that we'll find out more as the day progresses. Stay tuned to Pelicans.com and X, because we'll have updates, I'm sure, later. Willie Green will speak to the media at 5:30, so we might get an indication of who's in and who's out at that point. And then kind of turning to Sunday's game against the Mavericks, Fletcher talked about how part of his questioning of the offseason was based on, it seemed like they were going to have 2 rookies that were going to have huge roles.
Right.
It's actually been 50% true. Derek Lively, the guy that they drafted in the lottery, has started the last 6 games of the season. He's averaged 24 minutes a game, so he's got a pretty big role for them.
Yeah.
Omax Prosper was one of the other rookies that a lot of people thought was going to play a lot. Dallas is pretty deep, and some of the moves they made in the offseason fleshed out their roster a lot more. He's actually only played in 1 game and played a total of 1 minute so far, so he hasn't been a big factor. But one of the guys that I think has turned, at least so far, has looked like a really underrated offseason addition was Grant Williams. People are familiar with him from Boston.
Yeah.
He was a role player there who was good, kind of a hard-nosed defender, had some little dust-ups and run-ins with Jimmy Butler during the playoffs that were entertaining.
Yeah.
He's also shooting 53% from three-point range earlier in the season, which, Fletcher talked about. Surrounding Luka with shooters is always a wise idea, and he's just been red hot so far. So that's one of the reasons why, I mentioned Lively, but also the start that Grant Williams is off to is why Dallas has the second best record in the Western Conference so far. So that's going to be a tough challenge on Sunday for the Pelicans. But and I think in another bit of good news, in addition to hopefully getting some guys back on the court soon, that Dallas game Sunday starts a 6-game homestand. Yeah. So you're going to have a chance, hopefully, to do some real damage. It's all against Western Conference teams. Dallas twice, Sacramento twice in there. So it's a stretch where they're going to be able to unpack their suitcases and hopefully do well on the home floor.
Yeah, and if you're looking at that stretch here in New Orleans going, how's the team going to endure that? You know how you can help? Go get some tickets, get in the stands, and cheer on your New Orleans Pelicans. It is a home game for a reason. The advantage is real if you are there, loud and proud. So get there for that home stretch and help the Pelicans weather this storm. Man, speaking of weathering the storm, it's been a stormy one, and I couldn't have made it through without Captain Jim Eichenhofer and Fletcher Mackel. It's been a great one. And please tell your friends and pals to check out the Pelicans podcast and get involved as this in-season tourney stuff starts to turn some heads. Explain it to them however you can without blowing their minds. We will talk to you once again on Monday. But until then,
thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time right here